Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this adorable bow garland. Mine is fall themed, but obviously you can do any color that you want. And we're going to go very slow, step by step. I'll show you how to make each bow and then connect them together. And then at the end, I will show you how to hang it on your wall, your fireplace, or anywhere you want. What you'll need for this project is whatever fabric you want to use, and you need it to be the width of the fabric. So this is quilting cotton, which is about 40 to 45 inches wide. So you'll need fabric that's at least that wide, and you'll see later, but we're gonna cut 6 inches for each bow. So those should be your fabric measurements. You need thread in any color you want, and your basic sewing supplies, machine, needle, rotary cutter, or scissors, cutting mat if you use a rotary cutter. And this is really a simple and beautiful project that is just gonna elevate any home decor you have. So grab your supplies and let's get into it. So here I've got all of my fabrics picked out. As you can see, I'm doing a fall bundle for this bow set, and I have 7 different fabrics because I'm going to be making 7 different bows. So here's how to actually make the bows. Going one fabric at a time, open it up so you have the full width of fabric here to work with. And make sure all of the layers of the fabric are even so you're getting a straight cut. This is 45-inch quilting cotton, so if you're not using that, I would recommend somewhere around that length to trim your fabric to. Then what we're gonna do is align it with a straight edge on your ruler and measure 6 inches up from that edge and cut. One cut will be the fabric for one bow, so repeat this step for as many bows as you need. Like I said, I'm making 7 bows to fit the space above my fireplace, and I've chosen a variety of fall colors. So I think this is going to be an adorable little fall collection. Measure up 6 inches and cut. No. So here are all of the cut bow pieces. Once you have yours cut, let's move on to the next step. Once again, just starting with one of your fabrics, fold it out lengthwise, and then you're gonna fold it in half hot dog style. Match up your edges, and I recommend using a few clips to just hold everything in place. Once you have that, bring your 2 short edges together, and we're gonna make a cut that will point the ends of the ribbon. So there's not really an exact way to do this. You're just gonna kind of eyeball it, and you're shooting for about a 45-degree angle. You can line it up with some of these lines on your quilting mat, or just kind of cut it and hope for the best. So now both ends should look something like this, cut into a diagonal. Now what we're gonna do, opening it back up, we are going to sew short edge down the long edge, leave a gap in the middle of the long edge, and then do the same thing down the other side, finish the long edge and sew the short edge. So I'm gonna start back here. Once you get to the point, put your needle down, lift your presser foot, and turn your fabric. And then you're good to start sewing along the straight edge again. I'm using about a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. You want to try to get your gap as close to the middle of your bow as possible because that'll make flipping it right side out so much easier. I'm gonna backstitch just a couple stitches at the beginning and end of my gap. Pull the needle up, snip this thread. I'm gonna leave a few inches here. It's always better to give yourself more room to work with than maybe you think you need. So I'm gonna start down here with a couple back stitches and then finish this seam. Once you get to the end, just like before, you'll leave your needle down, lift your presser foot up, rotate the fabric, put your presser foot back down, and then sew that last edge. I also like to backstitch at the end just to make sure it's super secure. And there is the first step done. Now what you want to do is go back to that hole. Looks like I didn't do too good of a job of centering mine, but that's okay. And you're just going to push all of your fabric right side out through that little hole that you left. You can just use your fingers for this. I also like using my marker because it doesn't have a super pointy, sharp point, but it still can help me reach a little bit farther in there and just kind of smooth everything out. You're gonna wanna go slow and be kind of careful as you do this so that you're not busting your seams, especially in the corners. I used to use a stiletto to poke these corners out, but that just made a giant hole in the corners every time. So now I just go a little bit slower with my marker and it works just fine. So there's one side done, and then here's the other side. Let's go smooth this out. Again, poking out those corners, making sure everything is laying really flat. And if the corners aren't poking out as much as you would like them to, I would take a pen or something with just a little bit of a smaller point and use that. But once again, you don't want it to be sharp because you don't want it to poke a hole through your fabric. Beautiful. Now we have one long tube and we are ready for the next step, which is to top stitch along the entire edge, all sides of the tube to create a flat rectangle with these diagonal ends. And you're gonna wanna make sure that you're sewing up that hole with the fabrics tucked in, and you're closing that up while you do this top stitch all the way around your bow. I'm using a contrasting thread here to match the rest of my fabrics, but you can use any color thread you'd like. Okay, back to the sewing machine. I like to start at a point, presser foot down, needle down, and then just do a top stitch all the way around. And then do a couple back stitches at the end just to keep everything in place and trim your threads. I love the contrast stitching on this. It feels so festive. So now you're gonna repeat this with all of the rest of your fabric. If you need the instructions again, just rewind this video a little bit and watch it as many times as you need, but I will meet you back here when these are done. Here are all of the bow pieces, all made and ready to be folded into bows. So we'll just go one at a time. And what you're gonna do is kind of drape it over your fingers like this. So you wanna make like an M. You make like a letter M. And then pinch these top two loops, cross one over and fold it under, flip the tail back with it. And then before you tighten it all the way, you kind of want to situate it how you want it. So both of the tails should be towards the back of the bow and both of the loops towards the front. And then when you're happy, pull that as tight as you can. And then just make sure to untuck any creases, or like here we have a little bit of folding. Just kind of maneuver it a little bit to lay how you want it to lay. Just like that. And then you're gonna repeat that same step with the rest of your fabric until they are all turned into bows. So once again, make an M with your fingers, pinch, cross, and flip that tail to the back, tuck under, and then notice how I switch hands to pull. That's how we keep the tails and the loops in the right place. And then you might have to even it out a little bit. And you can make these really any kind of shape you want. If you like longer tails and shorter bows, you can do that. And you'll just kind of play around with it until it's laying exactly how you want. And make sure that it's at least a little tight so it's not going to come undone. Once all of your bows are tied and you're satisfied with how they're laying, now you get to choose the order of how they're going to sit in their final garland. So I like to just lay them out to see what looks good next to each other. I have kind of 2 reds, 2 oranges, 2 solids, and 2 more neutrals. So I do want to make sure that they're evenly spaced across the garland. So I'm just going to try a few different combinations until I find one that I like. Okay, perfect. I've got my order. So I'm just going to stack them up so they stay in order. And then you're going to start with your first 2 bows. And what you're going to do is find the fold, lay them so that they're both facing right side up, the side that you want facing up, and just kind of lay them next to each other, and you'll see where they naturally want to connect. So what you're going to do is pick up these 2 folded parts, pinching them together so that you get the center of each bow with how it naturally lays. And then you're just going to sew like maybe an inch in here, sewing the 2 of them together. You don't need to go too far down into the bow. Just attach them towards the top, and of course make sure you trim your threads. And there you can see how we have the 2 connected. Just like that. And then you're going to do the same thing with the next piece. Lay them next to each other, find where they naturally are folding, and that is where you're going to sew. You can pin or clip them if you want. I just kind of eyeball it because when they're hanging, it's not going to need to be too precise anyway. Make sure those top edges are lined up nicely. Take it to your sewing machine and sew down about 1 inch. I like to just go over it a few times just to make sure it's extra secure. There's your next piece. After you sew it, if they're not laying the way you want them to, you can just adjust the bows so that the seam is at that middle folded part. Let me show you here. You can see the stitch. It doesn't go down that far. That's about 1 inch. That's on the inside of the bow. And that is only as much as you need to sew it together. You don't want to sew it too much because then it won't have a nice drape when you hang it. There you go. Your bow garland is all attached together and ready to hang. Okay, you've made your beautiful bow garland. Now let's hang it. You can really use anything to hang this. I like to use ribbon for mine, and I have this little scrap left over from another project, so that's what I'm gonna use. You could use thread, a small piece of fabric, ribbon, kind of anything that is similar to that. And you really don't need that much of it. So what you're gonna do is take your end bow after they're all connected and go to the outer loop. And you're just gonna thread that through the loop and tie a little knot. You can make this however loose or tight you want. If you make it tighter, your bow is gonna hang closer to the nail or pin or whatever you're using to hang it, and you won't see as much of the ribbon. I'm just gonna double knot it since this is like a silky ribbon and it's kind of slippery. Okay, and then once that's done, I'm gonna just trim this off. And there you can see my ribbon. I just tied it in a knot, so what I'm gonna do is flip the knot to the inside so you can't see it, and then fix the fabric so it's laying nicely again, and that will be how I hang it on this side, and I'm just gonna do the same thing on the other end. Okay, once you have your 2 hanging sides on, you're ready to hang this up. Come on, I'll show you how. Okay, I will be hanging this above my fireplace, but wherever you're gonna hang it, you need a little nail or a push pin or something to actually loop it on. I already have some nails here because I love hanging garlands on my fireplace, but it's really simple. You literally just put this loop over the nail And there you go, you have a beautiful garland. There you have it. That was a pretty easy but high impact project, and I personally love the result, and I hope you do too. If you liked this video, subscribe for more sewing and quilting content, leave me a comment and show me your bow garland, and come back for the next one. See you next time.